Hello, this is Jackie Morgan, and we're going to be continuing on with our Adoption and Diffusion of Innovation material. And this time we will be specifically applying it to Geoffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm, which is a more appropriate adaptation of the adoption and diffusion of innovation for emerging technologies. I'll go ahead and do a screen share, and you should have the PowerPoints open in front of you. Okay, I'm going to move my little icon here at the bottom so you can still see everything okay. There we go. Right, this should look familiar to you. As I mentioned, the chasm exists because word of mouth is such an important phenomenon in driving diffusion across categories of adopters. But for technology, I think we all can relate to the fact that some people who are really early adopters of technology don't feel like the rest of us, and some of us would prefer to learn about new technologies, not from these visionaries and early adopters and geeks and gadget freaks, but from people who are more like us. So what we'll be doing is we'll be going through each of these categories of adopters and describing their characteristics to better understand why the chasm exists and why word of mouth breaks down. The first category of adopter in the classic model are referred to as innovators. This does not mean that they innovate the product. It means that they are characterized by having a high degree of innovativeness in terms of wanting to be first. A more appropriate label for this group from the technology side is what Geoffrey Moore refers to as technology enthusiasts. Recall that under our normal bell-shaped curve, this is 2.5% of the market. And as I've mentioned previously, sometimes these are referred to affectionately as gadget freaks or geeks. Key for their purchasing motivations is that they are highly motivated by being first. These are people who wait in line overnight to buy new products. They like to beta test new products. Beta testing is when an early release is rolled out, and early adopters these technology enthusiasts need to help identify any bugs that the new invention may have that still needs to be addressed. Because these technology enthusiasts are tinkerers, they can develop makeshift solutions to those problems that they might identify during the beta test. And in fact, sometimes finding these initial problems is a badge of honor. And so they're highly tolerant if this doesn't perform kind of as expected. These first customers are not typical customers, yet they're critically important because they are the gatekeeper to the next group of customers. The next category of adopters, remember under our normal bell-shaped curve, these are 13.5% of the market. Classic model refers to them as early adopters. Our Crossing the Chasm model refers to them as visionaries. Visionaries is a really good descriptive label for what motivates this group of customers to buy new technologies. They want to revolutionize their industries by adopting technology to change the rules of the game, how competition is defined. And these visionaries are attracted by high risk, high reward investments in technology. As you'll see, the example on the last bullet is that Amazon has consistently made strategic investments in technology to support its business model that has been highly disruptive from the time it started, when it was building huge automated logistics and fulfillment warehouses that people thought Jeff Bezos was crazy for building such enormous capacity, to investments in drone technology, investments in automated warehouse technology, robots, investments in delivery services. All of these have been fundamental to Amazon kind of ruling the world of retail. These customers are not necessarily price sensitive when it comes to their purchases of technology, but they do expect that for paying a higher price, that they will receive customized solutions and intense technical support. The next category are the first half of the mainstream market, meaning the 68% of customers who fall in either the early majority or late majority. The label pragmatist, again, is an apt descriptor for this group of customers' approach to investing in technology from a B2B perspective. Pragmatists are comfortable with purchasing emerging technology only to make evolutionary changes in their business practices. They are not trying to disrupt the industry. They are not trying to change the rules of the game. They want their business to continue on as it has, but they would like technology to help them be more profitable. And we'll come to this later. Now, this is the word of mouth issue. Pragmatists like to buy when they have a reference for this new technology from a trusted colleague in the same industry. And so Jeffrey Moore has this thing that says, Bob won't buy until Jill buys, Jill won't buy until Hannah buys, but Hannah won't buy until Bob buys. So there's this catch-22. How do you get a reference from a trusted pragmatist when pragmatists won't buy without a credible word of mouth from another pragmatist? And this is the really important point here. Those visionaries are not a credible reference to pragmatists, because those visionaries are willing to bet their business by making huge investments in technology that are high risk, high reward, and pragmatists would never do that. So if somebody in retail says, well, Jeff Bezos built these huge warehouses, a pragmatist will say, well, I'm not Jeff Bezos, and that's not a credible reference for me. We'll talk about how to overcome the breakdown in word of mouth communication shortly. The next category of adopters are the other half of the mainstream market, another 34% that are referred to as conservatives when they come to buying technology. They are risk averse and technology shy. And they like to be able to evaluate multiple brands in the marketplace, because oftentimes when there's multiple brands competing, we do get some price competition. So this category, who is price sensitive, can look for lower price technology offerings. They also require a complete end-to-end solution. So an example would be if conservatives are looking to build a new website that's maybe more interactive. What they want is a website designer who also will buy their domain name, set them up with a hosting agency, and help them understand how to push out new content and manage customer inquiries so that everything is pre-assembled and easy to use. Their motivation to invest in technology is primarily to keep up with competitors in their industry. And they really like to rely on a single trusted advisor to help them make these technology investments. The final category are referred to as laggards or skeptics. They account for 16% of the marketplace. And remember, our categories are defined in terms of their time of adoption, and they lag significantly behind the rest of the market. Oftentimes, skeptics are referred to as Luddites. You can look up the background of this word that comes from when looms were being invented to help with weaving wool into fabric, and Luddites burned the looms. And in this case, skeptics will buy only if all other alternatives, meaning the status quo, are worse, and they're forced to buy in order to keep up. And I'm sure we all know people like this in our lives. So this important overview of these categories of adopters shows that for technology goods, word of mouth breaks down between the visionaries and the pragmatists, which means that from a revenue perspective and an adoption and diffusion of perspective, we get this gap in the diffusion process that sometimes is never overcome. And some promising technologies actually fail because they fall into the chasm and never get out. And one of the key things that needs to be different is that the messaging that was effective with the visionaries in terms of revolutionizing their industries is not effective with these pragmatist customers. So what do we need to do differently? Before I get into the strategy for crossing the chasm, let's just make sure we understand the differences between the visionaries and the pragmatists. Visionaries, actually, I'm not going to repeat all the bullets. You can see them here. They think pragmatists are rather pedestrian and boring, you know, the play it safe type. Visionaries are adventurers, whereas pragmatists really are very prudent types of businesses and customers in terms of business has an organizational culture. And they think visionaries are dangerous. And so you can see that word of mouth breaks down. In order to overcome this problem, it's critically important for emerging technologies to develop a very specific strategy to cross the chasm. I'll go ahead and introduce these two elements of what's important in terms of the crossing the chasm elements, and then I'll go ahead and pause and start a second recording in terms of how to actually build that strategy out. Crossing the chasm requires that a company first identify a beachhead, which is defined as a single target market, which is a group of customers that are strategically selected based on the value proposition that the technology offers for that specific market segment. And when it comes to emerging technology, market segments are sometimes referred to as use cases or market applications. A beachhead should also provide access to related market segments in order to get this word of mouth effect going. So we're going to be talking about a bowling alley where the beachhead is the lead pin in our bowling alley, and the related markets behind it are the subsequent pins in our bowling alley. Whole product needs refer to the end-to-end solution that's required for technology to work. So, for example, if I have an electric vehicle, yes, I can buy the car, but an important part of the whole product solution would also be charging infrastructure, whether that charging is at home or whether that charging is on the interstate or whether that charging is at my workplace or somewhere else. There are more elements for electric vehicles than charging, but this gives you a flavor of what the whole product solution is. And we'll be referring to this in our class as ecosystems as well. Go ahead and pause here, and then the next video will pick up on these two ingredients for the crossing the chasm strategy.